Hello, my name is Stephan Alt and I work in the Layout Development and Simulation Department at Rides. We are a group of 6 engineers working on the big picture of the roller coasters, designing the layout centerline and the layout dynamics. So Voltron Nevada is a really special project because that's right around the corner here at our home park, Europa Park. The first thing, our first homework when we start with a ride layout and a concept is to look at the coaster portfolio of the park and look for a niche that our coaster could fit in. And for Europa Park, this was really tough to do since Europa Park already has a huge coaster lineup with a whole bunch of variety coasters, everywhere from like the airtime machine Silver Star to a wooden roller coaster Voltron, and then the first looping coaster Blue Fire. We quickly identified that we could one-up Blue Fire without competing with Blue Fire too much, and also incorporate more ejector airtime. So that was the basic premise of Voltron, having a more thrilling version of Blue Fire with inversions, but also having strong ejector airtime, since that was missing in the park. And combining those two leads us to hang time. The big thing for Voltron was that it is in Europa Park, and Europa Park has a huge requirement for high-capacity rides. So the biggest technical requirement was to hit a capacity of higher than 1,500 people per hour. So our target was 1,600 people per hour. With a 16-seater train, this is a 36-second dispatch. And the second requirement from Europa Park was that it should be a long experience. The work began actually like in 2019, 2020 with the first layout concepts. Everyone in the department, like all of our engineers, had a concept. We tried a lot of station positions and maintenance positions, and we finally settled for this site because it was the best one to accommodate this big coaster. So we intentionally tried to cram as much of the track into a small place as possible. After we were done with the concepts, I took over the project and basically compiled the best of best elements and made the final layout into what it is today. The main problem actually from a creative standpoint was that the long experience time has the tendency to tire people out. You really have to get creative with different kinds of elements, since if you do like only airtime hills or something, then at the end of the ride experience you're just bored, I would say. We had to incorporate a lot of block zones, which usually kill the pacing on a creative standpoint. So we try to make unusual block zones, not by like using standard block breaks. So there's a whole bunch of technical trickery that we did to increase the amount of block zones and to enhance the ride experience. Since this is a hugely thrilling roller coaster, we also had to make sure that it looks nice from the outside, since we expect that not everyone will ride it, since the main target audience for Europa Park is families. We also wanted non-riders to have a really nice experience in the creation-themed area as well. And that is also done by having a really interesting ride layout to look at. The track layout starts with a traditional launch out of the station building. Traditional in the sense that it's only a single launch, but going, in this case, 105 degrees up into an inverted top head, into a downward roll, small airtime hill, an Immelmann, a non-inverted Immelmann turning the other way, then launch 2, a flying launch, featuring a block section basically, then 2.2 seconds of almost 0G, small hang time, the strongest airtime moment in the whole layout, into an S-turn in a hill, over the maintenance area into a dive loop, and then we are basically in the back of house. The turntable turns by 180 degrees, which is also the same system as we did for the Power Splash in Walibi, Belgium. So after the turntable, we have a half-pipe launch, which goes backwards first into a small spike, which gives you basically the same feeling as a Viking ship, swinging ship thing. Going forward into a classical top head, which exits above the maintenance building, into a drawn-out airtime hill, into what the park calls an ejection drifter, which is an outside banked wave turn, Then a double up into the mid-course brake run, downward into a roll, into a pretty intense positive G-force load turn, a cutback and a traditional corkscrew, and an airtime hill to finish things up. During our development process, we try to use visualizations to show which kind of requirements and constraints we have during the layout. So what you can see here is in green streets with a clearance height for cars. Other things are in red, the small river going along the side. For environmental reasons, we couldn't do any groundwork there. And in pink, we actually see underground cables and waterways going there. So we had to make sure that no foundation work was done there as well. And we used those visualizations to see or to guide us where we could actually go with the layout. We didn't have enough space for the station and maintenance area to be in the same space. We knew that the maintenance area should be in the back of house, also due to logistic reasons. We have to have trucks going to the maintenance area all the time, so we wanted the maintenance area to be accessible. Which is a lot better in this back of house area here. One of the things that we were sure would be needed was some kind of switch in this back of house area. Since Europa Park also wanted some kind of half pipe element and backward section as well, it was pretty obvious that we should try to use the same switch to make this half pipe work and also to get to the maintenance area. Then the main challenge was to actually use the space as efficiently as possible. Since we have 7 trains, the maintenance area is pretty big, and we had to fit a whole launch, a brake section, a turntable switch, the access track to the maintenance area and the maintenance area all in there. There was pretty much only one layout that worked. The obvious problem with our Big Dipper coaster is the limited capacity that we can get with only 8 seats. Years ago, we started experimenting with higher capacity Big Dipper coasters, which is basically 4-across seating, but with a train layout which accommodates more than 8 people. This further development of the Big Dipper coaster is basically our striker coaster, which can accommodate anywhere between 8 and 24 people and is a perfect fit for like higher capacity rides, which feature these outer seats as well. The striker train is developed by a whole different group of people here at Mack Rides. We have a whole department which focuses only on train design, similar to a whole different department which focuses on the detailed construction of the brakes and station, etc., and the maintenance area. So these are basically the 3 big engineering departments here at Mack Rides. One is the layout development for the whole big picture, one is the train design department, and one is the steel manufacturing department. So the train development for the striker coaster here for Voltron was basically in parallel to the layout development, which brings a whole bunch of new challenges because like the whole development has to be hand in hand such that everything works at the end. So for other coaster types where we know what the train will look like, the layout development is easier since we know exactly what the dimensions of the coaster train are, what the weight is, etc. We did have some experience with 4-across seating due to the Big Dipper layouts that are already existent, and we know that 4-across seating will lead to more excessive lateral G-forces during rotational twisting elements, which is to be expected. So we basically transferred all that knowledge into the striker coaster now, which obviously also has this added thing that the trains are now of a significant length. So you have both the effect of being left and right and also the effect of being front to back, which really gives you a really diverse set of accelerations to the body depending on where you sit. The amount of both technical and creative constraints was pretty large. Due to the theoretical capacity that we should hit, there were a whole bunch of new considerations that you have to make, which was the first time for me during my career to really think about, think deeply about capacity and how to mix things up during the layout, just because it's such a long layout as well. That really helped me also grow as an engineer for future projects as well. This is not something that you get every day, such a project. It's basically one in a decade, maybe one every 20 years, that you have such a huge project with this big budget, this big of capacity. This combination is really something that I would expect wouldn't arrive again for the next 10 years, I would say. Helix at Liseberg was pretty similar in that way that there was a whole bunch of constraints due to the unique landscaping and also quite the big capacity with 4 trains there. And people still talk about, at Makra, the engineers still talk about like that big project for Sweden. And I think down the line, like in 5 years, we will talk about this one in a similar fashion. The first ride was too much input. You really have to ride it several times to appreciate all the work. During layout development, we really think about deeply how each element feels. And the expectation is that it will feel like how we try to make it feel during layout development. And I think that is also something that grows with your experience. Like I've done several layout projects now. The times I am surprised how a new element feels gets smaller and smaller, which is, I would say, a good thing. For me personally, I couldn't still process like the realization that this project is now finished. It's too short of a time frame from opening to now. So I haven't had the emotional reaction yet, but I expect this will at some point, like in the future, it will happen that I'm standing there and I was like, oh really, I did that.